Welcome to Soul Rising. We're your hosts, Amy and Erin. We're two everyday mediums who are passionate about taking the woo-woo out of spirituality and bringing it down to earth. So put the kettle on, grab a chair, and join us.
Hello, welcome back
Hello.
to the Soul Rising podcast.
That's right. Soul Rising Podcast, episode 60.
60.
Thank
I actually like it because you know what I was thinking, Amy, when previously when we were talking about sixes,
Yeah.
because this is 60, so I thought that was kind of cool that we were doing episode 60. Like we were, I don't know.
Yeah, that we're moving into the
Into
60s here.
Flower
come a
power.
long way. Yeah. So, welcome to February.
Yeah.
We're now in the second month. I don't know where the time's flying. It's like insane how quick 2020. Like I know we're only a month in, but like
Yeah, but I don't, Amy.
I've had multiple
like,
people go, like how the last couple of weeks have flown by.
it
Have you noticed
literally
that?
feels like I'm flying by the seat of my pants here.
Yeah.
Like, especially
got-
because we've got the
anticipation, right, of the wedding and the planning and all that stuff. But like, just as somebody, well, I know that I have something that I'm anticipating too, like with our upcoming move. But
Well,
even
yeah.
so, I still think it's moving fast.
It is.
But do you guys agree? Is this year so far moving fast? Because
But you know what is interesting is because I don't know. It's probably the energy. Like I want to go back and listen to maybe what we were bringing in for February, but because before I was feeling like before the holidays, I was feeling slow.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if you were feeling, but I was just kind of feeling a bit in a daze. Excuse me, and I still feel like I'm in a bit of a daze, but I feel like things are moving much quicker. Yeah. I don't know. But I think I've also, and you've been busy this month. I've been busy this month. It's been a roller coaster.
It's been a busy month. Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because I just got over the flu a few days ago, the stomach flu, which is no fun.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how many people messaged me when on the second day of the flu. So it was like really just a 2-day thing. I had like 5 or 6 people message me and say, I'm sick too. And I think it's like to do with the solar flares. So there was like all these crazy solar flares happening. And they're like, I was like, well, okay, I think I have a virus, right? Like, I do think that I do have a bug, right?
Yeah.
But like, it also doesn't surprise me. Maybe it was a little bit more intense or something because energetically, because there was a lot of like energetic shedding that was happening.
Yeah. And sometimes that does happen. Like I find if I'm like super busy sometimes too with readings or like I don't know. I feel like kind of a bit stuffy or like, I don't know if you ever feel that way.
Your body slows you down?
My body slows me down. Yeah. And then coincidentally, but not coincidentally, because nothing really ever happens by coincidence. If I'm really, really busy, then maybe the following week I'm less busy. I'm like, oh, I know why we do this. Spirit does it on purpose.
We do this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before where we're like, why this month was I being like inundated with like client readings and why do I have a 2-week window where I don't have anybody? And then you sometimes
then you
it's
realize
in your head and be like, oh, what am I doing wrong? But then the time comes and you're like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Like I really just need to not do anything.
I needed a break. Yeah.
I needed a break. Yeah. Or maybe you get sick during that time,
Yes.
or maybe something happens that needs your attention elsewhere.
Yeah. I often feel that way too sometimes, where like if I'm sick for a week, it's just because I need to actually rest and like I didn't get that time.
I've begun to like, when I'm sick with anything, like I know like obviously there's an actual physical reason, like a virus or a bug or something, right? But I also do know, I do believe in energy, and I do believe that sometimes we need an energetic cleanse. So I've started to ask myself, like, what am I holding back on? What am I not being truthful about? Like, I do ask myself these questions too when I get sick.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like that's part of something too. Like, it's an opportunity to revisit something.
Yeah. Because what does it do when you're sick? You gotta stay home and you gotta rest. You gotta slow down. I mean, didn't COVID basically force everybody to slow down too? It was awful, but it still is.
It's interesting too, because we've talked about this before, but we've also talked about how, like, me personally, I think that you agreed, or I don't know, I don't want to speak for you, but I know me personally, like before 2020, I did a kind of an energetic forecast that I thought was just going to be for 2020, and I actually started bringing in things for like the whole decade kind of thing, like almost like an overview of what the 20s were going to be like.
Yeah.
I still, when I think of the 20s, I think we're in the like 1920s is what I'm referring to. We're in the 20s, which is weird. But I was kind of bringing in this thing where it's a bit bumpy, a bit tumultuous, and then 2027 something kind of shifts. And then since that, which I know we've talked about, I got really into gene keys. I'm still into gene keys. I'm still learning about gene keys, but they literally talk about 2027 as being a time when we shift into a new era, which is more about the individual. Not in the sense of being self-centered, but more being self-focused, so that there would be more priority on what do you need to be happy, and then having a society that supports that. So we're all supported in what makes us feel better.
Yeah.
Last episode, we talked a little bit about the year of the rabbit and 2023, and it literally kind of talked about that, like kind of aligning yourself with soul-based interest and passions will be a focus.
Yes.
It all makes sense for me. I think that we're moving into a new era.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and I think a lot of other people would agree too, because it's part of that. What is that age of Aquarius coming into that big shift, right? On a global scale. So,
it's interesting. I don't know if I talked about this, but like one of my favorite podcasts, other than this one, obviously, is Into the Wooniverse by Colette Baron Reid. So I love Colette Baron Reid, and she has an awesome podcast. And she had one with, did I talk about this?
Maybe.
With Deborah Silverman, who is a very well-known astrologer. She had her on. There's an episode. So if you just look up Into the Wooniverse, you'll be able to find it. It was in December. Anyway, she kind of talked about the age of Aquarius and like the astrological evolution that you're seeing happen right now, and where even things like people's gender identity and things, like how that totally aligns with the age of Aquarius. Like it's kind of like male, female, who cares? It's kind of like, why are we labeling anything? We just are, right? And that how and how aligned it is. I just got like whoosh of goosebumps. How aligned that is with moving into this new energy. And I thought that was really, really cool.
I love that. There's more fluidity.
Yeah, but there's meant to be.
Well, yeah, it's here.
It's already here.
It's already.
Some of us are resisting it. We're holding on to the ledge like, no. Yeah.
Oh, I know people who are really holding on to that ledge tight.
Yeah. But it's like you gotta go with the flow, or the resistance just creates more challenge and pain.
Yeah, and as we all know, you don't grow when you're comfortable. Let go. It's okay. It's okay.
Yep.
Nothing bad's gonna happen to you if you let go.
Yeah.
Speaking of, we are talking about letting go all the way into outer space. You like how I tried to kind of
I like that segue. Yeah, I love it, because
I was racking my head around like what to talk about for the podcast, and I'm a big, well, maybe not big, but I'm fascinated is a good word. I'm fascinated by UFOs. Okay, I'm fascinated by this idea of other dimensions, maybe other realities, different life on other planets. I've always been, I think as soon as somebody said, you cannot measure space, it is, we don't know. I also once heard somebody say, you know how big space is because you're going to come all the way back to the back of your head. Like you're going to be looking at the back of your head. Because it's like infinite. I'm probably butchering that, so I'm really sorry. That's definitely not how that quote was. Everybody's like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, Erin.
Yeah.
Anyways, but it's infinite. I think that as soon as I heard that it's just been kind of blowing my mind, and deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole I go. And I love doing this work because, and also I love it because when people say, I have a question, but you're going to think I'm nuts. That's my favorite part, because I go, no.
I'm not going to think you're nuts.
I'm not going to think you're nuts.
I probably had the question too.
Yeah. Also, who am I? You know, I am a person that can connect to people who have passed away. Nothing is nuts. It's
Nothing's
not
off the table anymore.
No.
No.
We're already off, right? So I don't know where I was going with that, but I do know. Thank you, Spirit. When they ask me about UFOs, or like I feel kind of connected, or I love when it kind of comes up too sporadically in readings, and I go, I might sound like I'm off my rocker, but do you have a fascination with space or UFOs? Mm-hmm. And more likely than not, people are like, oh yeah, big time. So I wanted to go into it a little bit, and also speaking about, you know, the pandemic, about, I think we talked about this previously, how it kind of caused us all to go within and have that pause, right? There were a lot more reports in Canada and also the US, I think globally, because people were in their homes. There were a lot of reports of UFOs, so unidentified flying objects, or UAPs, as I think it's now referred to, so unidentified aerial phenomenon. There were a lot more reports of it, and I thought that it would be really interesting just to kind of see what those reports were and where we are now with it. So, and also just from a Canadian perspective, we'll talk about the States a little bit, but of course, you know, we're all connected, so I think it's all going to kind of intertwine. But first, Amy, I wanted to ask you do you believe in UFOs? Have you had experiences with them?
I haven't ever had an experience with a UFO.
Yeah.
Do I believe in them? I would say yes, because I now believe anything is possible.
Yeah.
So my mind and my mindset has expanded. If you would have asked, I don't think I would have been closed by it. I would have not said, no, I don't believe in that. I might have been more of a person, you know, I'm talking in the past, who have been like, I don't really know, like open to it, but not really knowing one way or another.
Yes.
I did believe that it's probably very probable. But I don't have any experience with it.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, but I do believe people's experiences. Like, you know, like we talked about this before, where like somebody that doesn't experience mediumship personally, or maybe hasn't been touched by an authentic connection in a reading, would be like, because they don't experience it, they might be like, oh, that's just hogwash. Like that's just all made up. But we know it's truth because we live it. So that in itself has made me look at everything else very differently.
Yeah.
I haven't experienced it.
Yeah. But
I believe that it's probable. You know, like I think, like, who are we to say that like we're the only ones here, or that there's nothing else? There's like who, I don't get that piece. I'm like, of course there's something else.
Yeah.
So yeah, very long-winded answer to your question. Yes, I would say I believe.
Right.
No, I haven't had a personal experience. Yes. What about you?
I feel like it's always wild to me. Like, I've had experiences, and maybe it's just because I'm like asking for, when I do like readings, I'm just asking for energies with the highest intentions to please come through and help. Give me the energy, and like, let's get these messages out. Like, that's the intention, is like, help me be that channel, you know, for the highest good of others. That's the intention. And sometimes I feel like, I don't know if we would call them, you know, extraterrestrials or what, but I do feel like there is some other presence from some other dimension.
That's not a past loved one.
That's not a past loved one. That's helping. And maybe, and sometimes I honestly don't feel like what we're connecting with has ever really been human. You know, I feel that way with a lot of higher vibrational energies.
What about archangels?
Like, yeah.
Do you think they were ever human or no?
I don't think so.
Interesting. But guides, no, I don't think that they were either. I think guides were humans.
Yes.
That are now kind of evolving into a higher vibration.
A higher vibration.
No, I don't think archangels were human.
No.
At one point.
No.
Ever.
And I think, and it's interesting, actually, the connection between angels and UFOs, because there have been conversations about where some people do think angels are extraterrestrials. Yeah. But I mean, again, who are we?
Who are you to say? Yeah.
And some of these things, like that I've been looking at, are just so, there's no way that you could, it's unexplainable.
What is the definition of an extraterrestrial?
I think extraterrestrial, actually, I don't really know. My phone's faster.
My mind went there when we're talking about angels because I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, this makes sense. So it's
similarities.
Extraterrestrial is of or from outside the earth or its atmosphere.
Okay, and isn't that what an angel is?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. My mind went there when you said that, and I was like, what is the actual definition? Because I bet you could include angels in whatever that is.
Yeah. And people do. And it's interesting too, because this isn't anything new. Like when I was looking this up, I got some of my sources from Wikipedia, different news articles.
Okay.
There's so much out there. Like that's what I felt a little bit overwhelmed. I was like, I want to talk about this. And then I you know what happens? You go down the rabbit hole and you're like, what did I just get myself into?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's it's not anything new, because there are, in ancient times, like there were reports of it, and it also often got mixed up with gods, or something about a more supernatural or spiritual phenomenon. There was one actually that I was looking up, and I'm looking here on Wikipedia. One of the earliest ones that was thought to be supernatural was Halley's Comet.
Okay.
And they just didn't know that it was, something that would happen, right? More frequently, but because you just didn't have that information back then. But now we know, that's Halley's Comet, right? And yes, I think the same could be said for some of these things that we're seeing, but a lot of it is so, I looked up, we of course cannot talk about UFOs, extraterrestrials, without talking about the Betty and Barney Hill story. Do you know that story?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Amy.
Maybe I do, but not.
Okay.
Called that.
I'm gonna Coles Notes it, because there's a lot there. I'm also going to give this podcast a really big shout out, because they do a really good deep dive into it. Betty and Barney Hill. And there's a podcast called with Greg and Dana Newkirk. I think we've talked about them before. They have their own podcast called, oh gosh. Hang on. I'm sorry. I have to look it up. It's on my list here. Haunted Objects. Okay, because they have a haunted objects museum. Or a traveling haunted objects museum. And they do a really big deep dive on this story. So you should definitely, if you're interested in UFOs, if you know the Betty and Barney Hill story, but you don't know the full details of it. And also, I guarantee you, even if you know the details, you're going to want to listen to that episode, because it takes a big, they go into it. So Betty and Barney Hill are a couple. Okay. And the other thing that should be noted is that these were Betty and Barney Hill were very well respected in their community. Okay. They also were, Barney was a black man. Betty was a white woman. So they were an interracial couple. So already they have, there's discrimination. There's prejudices there about their relationship. So it was very important for them, I think, to kind of maintain this level of respectability in some sense, right? And because when this UFO experience happened to them, I think at first they didn't want to say anything at all about it. They were so reluctant to, and we'll go into it a little bit more, but basically, short answer, the story with Betty and Barney Hill is they were on a trip from Niagara Falls in Montreal, no less, and they reported a strange craft in the sky, and it came down, and basically they were abducted. Okay. And when they were interviewed, both of them underwent hypnosis, and both of them gave very eerily similar, very similar details, recounts. Yeah. And they were separated. Like, they didn't know they were being interviewed separately.
Yeah.
So their accounts were very eerily similar. Barney had a bit more of a traumatic, I would say, experience with the abduction, whereas Betty recalled meeting somebody, and you guys, maybe we'll post this photo in the episode, but Betty described what she called the leader. And if you, Amy, if you look at this picture, it is terrifying. But she was like, oh, he was actually very nice, or this being was really nice, whereas Barney had a very seemingly traumatic experience with it. But I guess they were explaining to Betty what they were going to do. They wanted to examine the difference between a human body and an alien body. So they were abducted. They were retelling their events basically through hypnosis. Skeptics have come across saying, well, this was all an illusion. They were under hypnosis. So who's to say that this actually did happen? Maybe this was from, some other events that were in the media or something like that was going on. Maybe they were getting that. The thing that really sticks out about this story, that stuck out to me, and they talk about it on the Haunted Objects podcast, is that when Betty and Barney, they were abducted, Betty put her dress in the closet and probably didn't notice it for maybe a week or something, and then she noticed these pink stains, this residue on her dress that she couldn't identify. I think she actually put it outside to air out or something, but she didn't really touch that dress. It just kind of stayed in her closet for so many years. And then finally it was tested, and you can actually look at that report of the testing of the dress, and it really breaks it down. I think it's still inconclusive what that is. Again, the report goes into a lot of detail.
Telling in itself.
That's what I mean, right?
Yeah, that's telling in itself, because if it was anything kind of earthy, something that is here. Yeah. They would know what it is. Maybe.
Yeah, right? You would be able, it was tested for DNA, it was tested for chemicals.
Yeah.
It's since, and I think the Newkirks were saying it's been tested a ton of times. Even presently it's still being tested, but we can't figure out what it is. Again, all that, if you type up Betty and Barney Hill, you can type up dress report. I'm sure you will find it. The report is there. It's really interesting to take a look at. So that's something that really stuck out to me about this. And the
when
other
did this
really
happen?
This was in the 50s, I think.
Okay. Are these people still living?
No, they've both since passed.
Yeah.
Their relatives are still alive. Yeah. I think actually a descendant of Barney's or Betty's is an MFA fighter, which is really cool.
So they were both Canadian?
And no, they weren't. They were American, but they were coming back from a trip to from Niagara Falls in Montreal. So they were on their way back to the States.
So did they experience this in Canada though? When they were in Canada?
Okay. I couldn't tell. That's okay. I'm sure if you went in, it is probably out there.
But you know what?
Sorry. It's in the 60s, 1961.
Geographically though, where they were, Niagara Falls, Montreal, is so close to the border anyways. I'm sure from space, borders mean nothing, right? It's probably
no, right?
Yeah, well, they're so close anyways.
They were abducted in a portion of the state of New Hampshire from September. Okay. So they were closer. They were in the States. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sad story. I think Betty, it sounds like she really it was a really big impactful experience for her. There's also reports where she drew out the star map from where these beings had come from. And an astronomer verified it, because it was something that hadn't come out yet until years later. They're researching it and they're like, oh, there's correlations here. That's like this is the star. Yeah. So that's really interesting. And yeah, I guess she really like, I think kind of went down the rabbit hole with it. I mean, it sounds like it's a very like surreal, pretty traumatic in some ways, life-changing experience, right?
Yeah.
From this case is where we start to also see the reports of, like, you know, those alien grays. Those are the big face, the two slits for the nose, the small eyes. That's because Betty, I'm pretty sure, you know, somebody can correct me, but that's where we get our notion of alien grays from, is because Betty described this person known as the leader.
Aren't the grays like not nice, or am I misunderstanding that?
Maybe there could be mixed opinions about that. I think, yeah, okay. I think there's one, yeah, I don't know. If you go down the rabbit hole, there's like somebody out there that says, I think there's a portion of UFOs that are really nice, and then there's another portion that are not so nice, and you just want to do experiments and blah, 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 blah.
Because I've heard of people talk, like, I mean, I'm not big in the whole UFO scene as much, but I have heard people talk about grays before, and I thought that they, like that certain like political leaders or certain celebrities are actually like grays, or you know, reptilians or whatever.
Oh yeah, just like, yeah. Oh, I know.
Interesting. Yeah,
it goes down. I mean, yeah, I don't know if I'm there.
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it seems like, yeah, maybe they are. But yeah, I don't think I'm there with it. But it's really interesting stuff, especially with that case, because it sounds like it really propelled the UFO, the whole phenomena
knowledge,
of everything. And then you start hearing about more stories. You hear about Travis. I don't know if you've heard about Travis Walton. That also is like a really extraordinary case. There's a movie based on it. I haven't seen it yet. It's called Fire in the Sky, but it's about that guy who basically, he's with his friends. I think they work outdoors. They're tree cutters or something. Okay, they work in the forest, and they see this big craft or this big thing, like this ball of red light. They decide to go after it and investigate it. And I also could be butchering the story. This is just from my recollection. But long story short, Travis ends up missing, and they don't know where he is. They end up going to the police station. They report him missing. And I think Travis Walton, he eventually turns up, I think something like a week later. And he's still in the same clothes and that he was when he was taken, you know, allegedly. And he's like trying to call, being like, hey, you know, where are you guys? Like, you left me in the field. And he had a sense of missing time because he hadn't known that he had been gone.
I was going to say, did he not know that he was gone?
Yeah.
Does he have memories of like being somewhere else?
Yeah. And I think he's undergone like hypnosis as well with it.
I'll have to look both of these stories up.
Yeah, the Travis Walton case is really interesting because of that missing time thing, and
is
that's
that more current?
Yeah. Yes. Current. I think there's other stories.
Current-ish, like not the 60s.
Yeah. Because he's still living.
As you were talking, I was wondering, like, I know like multiple people can see sightings, right? Like if something's in a certain area, like there'll be multiple accounts of somebody seeing it. But like abductions, do you think? I know this is just like your opinion, right? Or your thoughts, because I don't think anybody could actually know this. Do you think like that those beings would target a certain person for a certain reason? Or do you think it's more just like up to chance? Like, oh, these people are driving down this road, you know, a opportunity, or I was going to say crime of opportunity, but it's not, but you know what I mean? More like that, random versus there's a reason, there's a specific reason we're picking these people. Like, I don't know. I was wondering that.
Yeah. I'm
wondering if we could like, maybe that's something we'll like kind of
put out there,
look into and see what we find about it, what people's opinions of that is, because
and you see like a lot of these, the thing that really sticks out is regardless of like what you believe with it, this experience happened to them, and either changes their lives for the better or it changes their lives for the worse. Like they, you go through a very big existential, I would think, like almost crisis, right?
Yeah.
With it.
But everything's different.
Everything's different. I mean, I'm not, they did some stuff to Barney that would be like pretty traumatizing. We don't need to mention it on the podcast. You guys could look all that up, but it's wild. And recently we're finding out that there are, the government in the States, the Pentagon has since released a statement about UAPs, about all the reports they've received. And a lot of these guys are pilots. There was that documentary.
I do think there's stuff hidden. I do think the government hides stuff for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You would probably cause mass panic.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Because there was that. Do you remember? I don't think we weren't alive. But there was the radio when the radio played War of the Worlds, which is about an alien invasion, and it was a play. Okay, it was a play, but people thought this was real, and it caused wide panic, mass hysteria. People were actually leaving to go away. I don't know where, but they'd get in their cars and they would go. So I'm sure, like in some ways, you would probably have mass panic. I mean, we saw some mass panic when COVID came as well, right?
Yeah.
So, I can only imagine. Now, I mean, the government in the Pentagon has since, I think, said the majority of these can be explained.
Okay.
There are still some that they can't explain. There are still some reports. So they get, I think, and there is a website, Amy. It is massive. It's called the National UFO Reporting Center. Okay. And on it, you can see pictures that people have taken. There's drawings that people are like, I didn't get a chance to have my phone out. I didn't, but here's what I remember. And there's also, you can submit if a sighting if you want. And there's a long list of people from all over the world who have seen different sightings. And some of them have pictures attached. It's wild.
I'll have to check it out for sure.
And it was in the news more so that because people in Canada were reporting it, there were more sightings of it in Canada.
Yeah.
And our government, the Minister of Defense, was also debriefed at the same time. I think that the Pentagon was getting debriefed on all this stuff. So I have this document here. I'm going to send it to you. You can take a look at it if you want.
Sure.
How can I? Is there a chat button here? Yes, I see it. This is a government document. Everybody can go to it. I don't know how I got here, to be honest with you. So, but if you type in, maybe brief to MND, this is the title of it, Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, UAP, Government of Canada. You should be able to see the document. In it says that so this is what the Ministry of Defense was briefed on for Canada. Mm-hmm. It says that approximately 1,000 UFO sightings were reported in Canada each year, which is wild. Library Archives Canada collection of UFO reporting constitutes approximately 9,000 separate documents. UFO/UAP reporting in Canada historically under the dominion of multiple organizations with different interests and priorities, blah, 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 blah. And then it says recent examples, December 23rd, 2018 in Nova Scotia. Lights were reported by both a witness on land and one at sea. And sea is actually also a very common thing with UFOs. Like they're associated with water. So there are some people out there that think that the UFOs live underwater. Who knows?
Okay.
Yep, there's also that.
You never know.
Listen, just like space, there's parts of the ocean.
There's a lot underwater that we don't know about.
Right? Yep.
Yeah. It's almost scary when you think about it. I think it's just because, I don't know. There's something about space and like the depths of the ocean that scare me. Like as much as I love the ocean, I'll swim in the ocean, but it still scares me to think about what is underneath.
Yeah. And this report,
it's just so deep.
It's not as big as I thought it would be. It's only 7 pages.
Cool. We can link it in the show notes.
We can link it if people can go check it out. But there's reports of pilots in here, and I think one of the flights was on the way to Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And the pilots reported a craft that was like above them, and they put it out there to the whatever the people are called, traffic control, I think.
Yeah,
air traffic control, to see if there were any reports of this, and they couldn't identify it either. They were like, we don't have any reports of other airplanes. This doesn't appear to be like a drone. So there's like all sorts of these things from people who have these, you know, I mean, they're right. If you're a pilot, you've seen the skies. You kind of know what's an airplane, what's not, right? What's a drone, what's not. So
that reminds me a little bit about, like, I think we talked about the most recent season of Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah.
There's always like a UFO episode, it seems. But the most recent one, there is a UFO episode. Did you watch it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's I think it was actually near Minnesota. I can't remember for sure now. Maybe it was just Michigan. But a specific report and like how many people had seen it. But one of the people was a weatherman, like a weatherman, who literally like, you know, knew the sky,
weather.
Right? He actually talked about, you know, kind of receiving some backlash about it because people might view you differently, right? We're used to that, right? As people that are like talking to the dead, right? Like not every time people are like, okay, you know,
exactly. Like, well, that goes back to Betty and Barney Hill and people who have also experienced there's prejudice against it, right? And so no wonder this hasn't come out for years, because there's fear of, you know, being fired, or fear of being let go, or seen as kind of you're being othered, right, from the people that you work with. You're shunned. So it's anyways, you know, Alex does not believe in it.
No.
No. Which is interesting to me. I find interesting, but
he believes in spirit, right?
Yeah, because he's also had some wild experiences with spirit. So, but you know, teach their own. Yeah, I don't. Anyways.
I think there's like, I always feel like there's a level. I feel like we never get more than we can handle.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, well, that's like when I have clients, and sometimes I incorporate like teaching, like if they are themselves, you know, psychic or have mediumship kind of abilities. It's like, we can't judge what like one person can do versus another, because I feel like there's this layer, right, of like readiness for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like, and even like in a reading, and like sometimes, sometimes it's like, and sometimes it's just, like not as, and it's just because I don't, maybe there's an awareness like, hey, that person really can't handle all that, you know, like, let's just stick to basics today.
We're just giving them a little bit, and then because that's how it happens too. You've noticed, right, with people who come back, it's, here's more, here's a little bit more.
Yeah, it builds. Yeah, it builds as consciousness expands.
Yes.
I feel.
Yes.
Yeah. And I feel like that's why it's really important to work with, you know, whether it's a psychic, a medium, what have you, anybody that works with energy, that you work with somebody that is ethical.
Yes.
Because they're going to inherently know like how much is too much, right? Like we've all heard of, this is taking a very big sidebar from UFO, but like we've all heard of people who are like, so I went to see a psychic and they told me this, and it's like completely unethical, right? It's like, come on.
And that's where that fear comes from.
That's where the fear comes from. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, and I'll, you know, I'm always learning. I'm not going to say I'm perfect. You know, but I also am like a really hard critic of myself too. I always like I want to make sure that I'm, you know, speaking from a place of authenticity, and making sure that I'm, you know, having more of an awareness with each reading. Because I think every time you do it, you learn something new. Like there's so much about this work that I feel like if you ever meet a psychic or a medium that's like, this is how it is, here's how it run. Like
that's from their lens, their own, that could be through their own prejudice, right? Their own bias, right? I was literally listening to something the other day that was talking about like, you know, in the case of like mediumship, anybody who like swears that they know exactly what that is, you know, on the other side, like definitively is speaking through their own bias. They don't know definitively. None of us do. It's a great mystery of life. Erin and I that do this professionally for many, many years, I think both of us like the analogy, like we're just dipping our toe in, like for the sake of channeling for our client, providing them that love and that guidance and clarity. But like, do I know if it's heaven and puffy clouds and harps over there? No, I don't. And I won't until I go there. Because I try to do this work without any sort of bias, but we're human. So I feel like we can catch ourselves sometimes when we're like, where's this is coming from my bias.
Right. And then that's just all that's all part of it. And I don't know, it's amazing. We're really lucky, I think, that we get to do this, and
so lucky
that people can see your cat. I saw your cat.
I know. I'm thinking this is a really good time to end the episode. I've got to let the cat in the door so it can get to its bathroom. So on that note, have a lovely weekend.
Have a great weekend. Thank you for being on this wild UFO ride.
Thank you, Erin, for the information.
Oh, well, Cole's notes, guys. Like, nothing's 100%. Please just always double check your. Don't take my word for it, okay?
Check out the things that we put in the show notes if you want specific resources. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and tune in each week as we dish on all things spiritual.
Don't forget to like, comment on what you would like to hear us talk about next, and subscribe.